Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. Today's guest is Priyesh Vyas. He's a men's health advocate and a business owner, having set up his own gym, Fortitude Fit, earlier this year. In this episode, Pri and I discuss what the transition was like from the corporate world to setting up his own business, Fortitude Fit. We also talk about his struggles with mental health, having suffered from an eating disorder, bulimia, during his teen years, and why the fitness space can be such a confusing space to be in, especially when it comes to what we consider body norms, how best to support your friends who may be going through something similar, and a lot more. Really enjoyed this episode. It's great to hear from someone who has had first-hand experience with mental health issues and an eating disorder, as I think it's quite a challenging topic to approach. Although it's certainly being discussed a lot more widely, there's certainly a lot more to learn about this topic as well. So, very informative and has definitely given me something to think about as to how I can best support my friends and colleagues going forward. So, without further ado, Pri Vyas. So, Priyesh Vyas, nice to have you on the show.
Hey Reese, thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate it.
No, it's good to have you on. So I start with my guests. I like them to sort of ask them a little bit about themselves and their background. So if you can give us a few words about who you are, what you do.
Yeah, brilliant. So you just give me my full name out, which I very rarely get addressed by. I go by the name of Pri to most people, my friends, and I consider you a friend, Reese, so you can call me Pri throughout this podcast. So I'm Pri, I'm 31 years old. My education background is in aerospace engineering. So throughout my younger years, I always aspired to be in aviation. Kind of always have a fascination with planes and always knew that I wanted to be in that industry. So throughout my school and colleges, studied aerospace engineering, did the same thing at uni. So I went to Kingston Uni and studied aerospace engineering and really pursued for majority of my life a career within aerospace and aviation because I thought that was my passion. So it was only very recently that I did a huge career change. So after working in aviation, which was my dream growing up, so working in aviation for the last 10 years, doing various roles. Most recently at Gatwick Airport, I was working there as a senior IT project manager. I thought this was going to be the dream and something that would give me a lot of fulfillment in life. But as of recently, I discovered that wasn't for me anymore. So I did a huge career change, as I say, this time last year. And I took the dive into self-employment and opened up my own gym, which most people think, well, where's the correlation between a dream of working in aviation and open up a gym? There isn't any. There isn't any correlation at all. But it's always been a passion of mine working out, keeping fit, keeping healthy. And I'm sure we're going to go into a bit more about kind of everything physical activity and mental health wise in a bit. But ultimately opened up a gym called Fortitude Fit in Edenbridge in Kent. And we've now been open for 3 months. It's where I met you, obviously, Reese. And here we are. So 3 months in to open my own gym. It's been a whirlwind for sure the last year in self-employment, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. What I thought combining a passion for something I wanted to do business-wise, I thought it just made total sense. So that's a bit about me. I'm sure we're going to go into a bit more detail about a few things there, but yeah, I think on the whole, that's me.
Awesome. Yeah, so the idea of like the transition between being employed, going from a full-time salaried job to completely going at it alone, self-employed is, you know, I've had previous guests on who've done the same, and they just said for some it was a pretty easy transition. And I've heard obviously the expression goes, if you do something you're passionate about, you never work a day in your life.
It's so true.
See how you're getting on with that in 6 months' time.
Yeah, ask me again in 6 months. Yeah.
But for some it's quite easy, but for others, you know, they've described it as one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. So I think just being able to make that leap is something a lot of people would be kind of afraid to do. So how have you found the transition? Has it been a fairly easy one for you, or has it been something that's actually been a lot harder than you expected it to be?
I'd say somewhere in the middle, to be honest. Not easy, but I'm not finding it hard. I guess because I'm enjoying it. I think that's the key thing. And when people ask me, was it a hard transition? Yes, it was, because it takes a lot of balls. I'm not sure we're allowed to swear on this.
You can swear on this one as well.
Yeah, all right, brilliant. It takes a lot of balls to be able to actually quit a comfortable 9-to-5 job, the safety net of having employment, and actually doing it, and actually going out and say, actually, I quit this comfort and go for the unknown. So that was actually the most difficult part. I think the initial making the decision, yes, this is not for me anymore. I was waking up every day, Reese, in my employed role, and I was just thinking, this is not fulfilling for me. I was waking up every day with dread almost that, I'm having to go in and work for a company, and like I said in my intro, it was my dream to work in the aviation industry, and I was fulfilling that dream, which I thought I really wanted to do when I was younger. And I see this a lot with young people. They have a dream and they really pursue it, and then ultimately, as they get into the industry or pursue that, it wasn't quite for them. And that's what I found. I was in the industry, wasn't enjoying it anymore, waking up with dread. And so the hard bit was actually saying, this is enough. I'm not gonna do this anymore. I'm not gonna pursue this career. And I've always had a passion for business, and I think this stemmed from my parents. So my parents actually ran their own confectionery shop in Edenbridge as well, where I'm currently at, for 35 years. And I saw them growing up, obviously running their own business, and kind of the flexibility it brought, and how to work the numbers, how to talk to customers. I think all of this kind of rubbed off for me in an indirect way, really, because I was obviously looking at them, and they were almost a role model for me, I guess, as growing up, as most parents are, right, for their kids. So I think that rubbed off for me, and I think a testament to that is, during my school years, I would take a rucksack full of sweets from my dad's confectionery shop, some drinks, and I was a really skinny kid, at school, and I was carrying this huge rucksack around with sweets and drinks. And after school, kids had played football, and I'd open up the bag and I'd sell out the whole bag, and I'd take a bag of money to my dad and say, here's your money, and he would give me a cut. And I kind of got the drive for business from a very young age. And so I always knew I had that kind of entrepreneurial mindset, and wanting to do business, but I didn't know what. And so throughout my career, it was always in the back of my mind, I want to do something. And I ran many businesses kind of, in my spare time. And I think a lot of people are probably in that same boat right now, is they've got their full-time employment, but they're doing something on the side, something like yourself. You're passionate about podcasting. It might be slightly different, but, you're doing that on the side, and it's something that you may potentially become your full-time thing going forward. Who knows? But it was kind of that I think I've always had it from that very young age, that I've had it within me, that I wanted to do some sort of entrepreneurial business, whatever it may be. So I've tried a few things like online businesses and things, but ultimately, as I said, my passion combined with an idea to open up a business where I saw a gap in the market. The hard bit was buying the bullet and quitting that comfortable 9-to-5 job. Yeah. I think the easy bit has been the transition for me, because obviously my younger years and my drive to become a business person. So that's been the easy bit for me, I think.
So you've gone from mobile. There's a bit of echo, but you've gone from mobile tuck shop to, barbell connoisseur. Is that what you're...
Yeah. I mean, there was many years between that. I mean, yeah, absolutely.
No, it's interesting. Gyms, you see a lot of gyms popping up. It's I think the fitness industry is one of those industries where they seem to boom always, because everyone's always trying to get fit or improve the way they look. and so there's always a demand for gyms. What is it you think that you're trying to achieve with Fortitude that separates you from other gyms, and what's the vision there? How do you see it growing in the future, and what's the whole vision of where you want to take it?
Well, we'll start with the name. I think, open up the gym, I sat there, as I said, I quit my job this time last year, slightly earlier if we're talking about January last year. So I took a whole year to kind of decide exactly what I wanted to do, and then ultimately stumbled upon, okay, yes, there's an opportunity to open a gym. Then the next natural thing is, okay, what do we name the gym? It had to be something personable, had to be something that resonated with me, and something that, creates a brand and a vision and everything that we stand for. Hence the name Fortitude. So Fortitude, dictionary definition meaning courage in pain or adversity. In my background, in terms of my mental health struggles when I was younger and things, I'm sure we're going to go into that shortly. But in terms of the gym, I wanted to create a hub, create a community where people felt that they can come, be themselves, better improve their physical appearance, but mainly their mental as well. So I wanted to create a hub, community, a safe space for everyone to come and train. So hence why we've created a facility that, has everything that you may want, whether it be the boxing areas, whether it be the sauna, whether it be the treatment room, which I'm currently in at the moment, whether it be the studio, which is next to us. There is a bit here for everyone. But ultimately, I think, we're only 3 months in. My vision for the gym is ultimately become this hub, this community where we can run, podcasts about mental health, promoting positive mental health out of here, doing seminars. So everything that, typical gyms, you go in, you do your workout, you go home. I want to create a bit more of a community, a bit more of a hub here at Fortitude. And that's ultimately the goal. Now, obviously, we're still very early days, so we're still establishing ourselves as a business. So these things we have in the pipeline to ultimately come down the line is to create Fortitude as this hub, this safe space that people can come and promote not only physical health, but also mental well-being as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I used to train at a few CrossFit boxes, and I think the time I most enjoyed my training was when I was at uni. We were part of this community group, essentially. So it was group coaching, but it was, throughout a few different gyms. So I'd do it at my own gym, and then we'd go maybe once a week into the heart of Bristol at this gym where they were based out of, and we'd go through and do like a group workout. They had social events throughout the year and at Christmas time and things like that. And I think reflecting on my own experiences with fitness, that has been for me the peak of my enjoyment levels, is when I'm around people doing the social aspect. The CrossFit one wasn't so much for me. It's just not aligned with how I like to train as much. But for example, my other half does CrossFit and she absolutely loves it. She thrives. And again, they're the same thing. So they've got a nice community. You always see people down there for the events that they've got on. And I think it's just such a nice thing to do. And I think if you're struggling, so my situation in particular, I work away from home. Obviously we met through the gym, so I didn't know anyone around the area. So it's nice for me to be able to go in and actually start recognizing some faces, make a few friends that way. And I have done this in the past as well. So the community aspect, I think, is something that really sets apart certain gyms. I've trained at the commercial gyms before, your pure gyms, your fitness first and all that sort of stuff. And I just don't think you get that. And this was sort of coming out the other end of lockdown when I started training at the gym. I think it was the gym group. So no shade on those, those gyms. They're fantastic facilities for what they do. They're cheap, affordable, and you can just go in any time. Very flexible, especially if you've got sort of constraints in your working hours. But you do just go in and it's very much like, I've got to go to the gym, and you got to do your workout and then go home. And it's all right if your discipline levels are high and your motivation levels are high, but when they start dropping off, it's when the community aspect and things like that really comes into it, because you can go, actually, I'm going to see, my friend's going to be training and we can train together. And even if you feel like shit and you don't really want to train, you don't want to let the other person down, or you want to come and be like, okay, I don't want to be the person who's not seen to be going and not making an effort. So yeah, no, I really like that approach, and I really like the whole community aspect of gym. So, looking forward to seeing how it grows and how it develops. From what I've seen so far, it's always buzzing. There's always people doing and cracking on. So yeah, hopefully we can see where it grows to and keep it on that right trajectory.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've already started that. I know I've said it's kind of coming down the line, but I think naturally it's already happening. We're getting like-minded people coming here and train. It was only this morning I was speaking to Cam, who runs our front of house. He was saying we've created a real community of people that come in at 5:30. So we open our doors at 5:30, and it's the same faces coming in at 5:30. So they've started to create their own little, friend circle. Everyone knows their first names and things. And I think it's really, really important. I think we're living in a society now where we're becoming loose, and we're becoming, lonelier. We're living in, I think I was listening to another podcast, and the stats about loneliness is, through the roof, and people, not even having one friend to call. And these stats are really like mind-boggling for me. So to be able to create a hub like this and seeing people interact and start making friends is really, really key to me. And I really want to double down on this. And it's such a nice feeling to be able to create something like this and to see it, take shape. We've got a run club on Saturdays now, which one of our PTs, Max, he runs, and he started the first week. He had, I think, a couple of people come, and then they told a couple of friends, and now it's grown to, I think this week he had 30 people running in a run club on Saturday, on 8 a.m. on Saturday, meeting up, having a coffee after, having a laugh after. So people of all ages, abilities, all coming together and creating this community. It's a really good feeling, and I think we're going to go from strength to strength in that aspect. The business aside, that's obviously important to me, but I think what's more important is the vision and, as I said, creating this community and promoting mental health and community and relations, really.
Yeah, so you're building the foundations essentially from which you're going to grow from. So that's awesome. You mentioned before about some of your struggles with mental health, so we'll talk about mental health in a little bit, but I wanted to start with going back to those teenage years. So I know they were a pretty challenging time for you, and that you'd suffered from an eating disorder, and I think your teen years are so important because it's a time when you start to understand a little bit more about who you are. You are learning, and you're failing very quickly in rapid succession, not just academically but socially as well. And then it's a sequence of sort of trying to adapt and fit into that, that environment around you. So, what was it like for you when you were, growing up, and then obviously led to the time when you started suffering with this eating disorder as well?
Yeah, I'd say my childhood wasn't like, I hear a lot of people when they say about mental health struggles, and there's almost this stigma that it only affects people from certain backgrounds, and your upbringing must have been tough, and all these things. But to be honest, it wasn't. And I had parents that still, even to this day, obviously still look after me. Even though I'm 31 years of age, they still look after me like I'm I'm the little boy still. But it's it was nothing to do with that kind of upbringing. I had a great family environment. Everything like that was all in place. But I think, so it wasn't a struggle being a teenager going through this, but, almost felt like I didn't know what I was going through until maybe a couple of years later. It's one of these things, I think it only hits you once you're out of it, how bad it was. I think once you're in the midst of going through something like this, you don't realize how bad it is. You kind of almost take it for granted. You're going through this, and this is a kind of a normal thing, when it really isn't. And especially as a teenager, exam stress, you've got school deadlines, you're dealing with all these things, all these pressures. And I think it boils down to your personality and me being someone that I've always been a person that's been striving, always striving to be the best. Be the best of myself, be the best version I can be. So I think there's a combination of a couple of things there, but certainly my upbringing definitely wasn't a driver to leading me to have poor mental health. But I think there was probably a varying number of factors within that, you know, whether it is my personality because I was a striving individual and still am, or wherever it may be. But when you try and pinpoint it as a teenage boy, what you're going through, it's very, very difficult. Even though I look back now, I think, you know, I can't pinpoint one thing that it's like, okay, that's what triggered me having that poor mental health. But I think the awareness, the people talking about it at the time was very, not as it is right now, which is great, obviously, to see, you know, that it's so forefront of everyone's minds now, you know, about mental health and promoting good mental health. Whereas probably back then, we were talking, obviously, 17, 18 years ago now, no one ever talked about it. And the fact is, I went to an all-boys school, so that probably didn't help, you know, being surrounded by other boys and being in this boisterous environment. As a teenage boy going through poor mental health, you know, you just kind of keep it bottled in. You don't want to be that kid that kind of stands out for being, you know, going through all this stuff. So I reckon those kind of factors all kind of played into that, but it certainly wasn't easy during those times.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say, you know, it's actually quite refreshing to hear that you said, actually, you know what, my childhood was actually fine. And it, you know, wasn't like, because there is so much of that now. It's just, you know, we'll get onto it a little bit, but there's a few things that just don't sit right with me in the way it's handled at the moment, especially within the social media aspect. But just going back to that element of, you know, your eating disorder, it was bulimia, was it? You had?
That's correct. Yeah.
So there was someone in my school in my year who struggled with an eating disorder as well. Never spoke about it or anything, but we just, you know, noticed that one day they turned up and we hadn't seen them in a while, and it was just a complete shock to everyone who is familiar. But I find it's quite difficult. It's quite difficult to how to handle that sort of situation, because on the one hand you empathise with those people because you can clearly see there's something that is not quite, you know, there's not quite right. They're either very uncomfortable in their own skin or they've got this sort of distorted image of themselves, but you don't want to draw attention to that by then approaching them and asking them about it and trying to offer your support. So it's very, I've always found it very difficult, and I found it difficult at that time as well in knowing if actually it's none of my business whatsoever, or there's always that other part of me that was like, well, actually maybe everyone thinks that and she doesn't have any support from anyone. But also, you know, so is it your business, is it not? Should I offer support or not, and how do I go about doing that? I think I'm sure I'm not alone in feeling like that, especially to people who have been around those sorts of people or have had colleagues and friends who are going through it. So, you know, I wanted to ask you as someone who has experienced that personally and they've been through that, is there anything that you wish others around you had done maybe differently, or perhaps how you might advise someone to support a friend or colleague who may be going through that, and what's the kind of the do's and don'ts and that sort of thing? Yeah,
I mean, speaking personally, you know, I was hiding my bulimia for, I think it was around 3 years before anyone knew I was bulimic, you know, so you can imagine the kind of secrecy, the kind of, you know, hiding that had to go on. You know, you can imagine being at family events and ultimately purging out the dinner that you've just eaten with your family and going and hiding and these things, you know, so it's very secretive, bulimia. I know there's various different eating disorders that people can suffer with, but with bulimia especially, it's very secretive. So going 3 years without anyone knowing, and then ultimately a school teacher finding out, you know, seeing me firsthand purging out foods, you know, the first reaction is obviously then to tell my parents, and my parents, all they wanted to do was fix it. They wanted to fix it. They wanted to keep on top of me. They wanted to keep an eye on me. You know, so very kind of on top of you almost. I don't know how to describe it, but very kind of like just making sure I'm in line of sight all the time, all these kind of things, where I felt that kind of pushed me the other way, because it was so used to being secretive, and then suddenly the secret's out, and then you almost feel like people are on top of you and trying to fix it. Like, it felt very kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but very claustrophobic almost. I don't know how to describe that. But I think, speaking personally, I would have liked someone to, maybe not my parents directly, because ultimately the relationship I have with them is slightly different. But if I had a close friend that I can open up to, I think this is where it's so important now for men to be able to speak openly to their friends, close associates, co-workers, people that they can feel comfortable enough to speak with. So if I had someone like that, which I didn't at the time, being truthful, to just to speak with and say, look, I'm really struggling with this, or I need help with this, or, whatever it may be. But ultimately, I think it's down to the self. And I think if you ultimately want to recover and you want to get better, it's down to the self, and it's down to that individual to want to change. As much as the people around them can try and force them and try and support them as much as they can, it has to be on the self. But I think ultimately having a support system that is optional, whether, okay, I'm going through this, if I have got someone there I can speak to, I know I can speak to that person openly without any judgment coming back the other way. I think that's really powerful. And I think that would have really helped me at that time. And looking back at those years, I think, all right, I wasn't confident enough or whatever it may be with my parents to speak to them, because ultimately they were trying to top me and trying to fix me. Whereas where if someone just want to listen to what I've got to say and why I'm, what I'm going through, that potentially could really help. And it's a really difficult subject because, people go through years of training to understand how to deal with people going through mental health issues. It's not a one size fits all. So whatever my experience may be might be different to someone else. Some others may really welcome, keeping a check on them and things like that. So it's not a one size fit all. But speaking from personal experience, I think just being there for your friend or whatever and be able to open up. And I think especially men, we try and bottle it in. We don't want to be seen as a weak person. And now who wants to be around a weak man? According to social media, every man is a strong man, should never cry, should never, do this and that. And so, I think breaking down that stigma has been something I was really keen on, and hence why I joined BEAT, the charity for eating disorders, and ultimately being the first Asian male that represented BEAT, the charity, which I found staggering as well. But there were so many layers to obviously what I was going through and why I didn't speak about it. And but ultimately, coming back to your question, I think it varies person to person, but having someone to speak to, I think is a key factor of recovery.
Yeah, and I think the idea of when you just use the language there about fixing, your parents wanting to fix you, that already just sets the tone, doesn't it? Because that indicates that you're broken, and that's so you can see how that would lead down a path to push you further away. And that's not to say they've done anything wrong. It's just a case of, and this is where it is so difficult, and why I asked the question is, if you want to support, which obviously your parents did, and other people who have got friends who want to do it and they've tried to offer support as well, the intentions are there, they're good, they want to help you, but by saying they want to fix you, it may not be the most conducive thing to lead into your recovery. But that's why I ask about, what's the best approach here. So it sounds like just not really active support so much, but just kind of passive, in that letting people know, hey, look, I'm here for you, I'm your friend, and just leaving it at that, and then just kind of open the door for them to walk through if they want to do that, rather than going, come on, like, you got to tell me about it, because that's the kind of thing that drives people away more.
Definitely. And all I could say is, being that friend, that support, but ultimately then that friend should be with you on the journey then to, seek professional support, seek professional help. So as I said, I mentioned BEAT there, the charity that helps young people, I think of all ages now. I think they've opened it up to, but it's a charity specifically to help individuals going through eating disorders. So being that friend that will say, you know what, there's specialist help out there, which I'm going to be with you on every step of this way. I'll even sit on these calls with you, with these professionals and things like that. Just to be in the support system, not ultimately just to check in on them, but being there to support conversationally, support-wise, but then ultimately helping them get the professional help that they need. Because I think this is such a niche topic, mental health. There's so many layers to it. You could be going through depression at the same time you're having eating disorders. You could, you should be going through a lot of different aspects of mental health and issues which ultimately a professional should be helping you along the journey with. But your social circle should be there to support you, and I think that's really important, especially for men. Whereas women typically, obviously, will open up a lot more to their friends and family, and I think this is where the difference between men and women is really key. And obviously, we all know about the suicide rates, and it's staggering, the difference between men and women in terms of those stats, in terms of suicide rates. But I think it ultimately comes down to maybe a simple conversation and simple support system, which men have typically been shy in asking for.
Yeah, 100%. I was looking at some articles before the call, and there were a couple on sort of body dysmorphia. So obviously, you're in the fitness space now. You say you're someone who's really enjoyed working out. You're obviously in great shape. Looking at body dysmorphia, that's kind of coming to the forefront a bit more, especially in the fitness space now as well. So, there was a survey done by the Mental Health Foundation. I think it was 4,500 adults in the UK back in 2019. They found, so 1 in 5 said they had concerns about their body image, and that caused them to dress in a certain way, so covering up parts that they were not comfortable with. 1 in 5 said they had negatively compared themselves to other people because of body image in the past year, and that's something I'm going to talk about in a little bit as well. And then there was a one about 1 in 10 said they had experienced feelings of suicide and things like that as well. So it's a really I'm glad we are talking about it more, but I think there is a bit more work to be done. But I just want to touch on the idea of body dysmorphia, and I had a previous guest on, so Dee Dee. So she's a nutrition coach, and she spoke about how some of her clients, and she used a specific word here, and it really kind of shocked me, but she said some of her clients absolutely detest their bodies. Like, they are just so not out of touch, but they just hate the way they look, and they're so against how they look. And it's really shocking, and it's quite sad really to hear that people feel that way about themselves. So, and it doesn't just affect people who are perhaps overweight, or maybe need to, in societal terms, need to lose a bit of weight, but it also affects, a lot of men and women in the fitness space as well. You've got this idea of, bigorexia now, where it's people are comparing themselves to these fitness models. And it is, it's quite frankly confusing, because you've got elite level athletes who all look so wildly different depending on what area of fitness you look at. You've got endurance athletes like Chris Froome cycling, like super lean. Eliud Kipchoge, 2-hour marathon, super lean again. And then you have these ultra sort of heavyweight bodybuilders like, your Mr. Olympias, you've got Chris Bumstead, you've got these sort of social media influence like that, and that 20-year-old guy, he's around that age, Sam Sulek, which everyone's talking about at the moment, absolutely huge. But then you've got the polar opposite end of that spectrum, where there's, a weightlifter, an Iranian weightlifter called, I think he's called Ali Reza Yousefi. He's 160 kilos, and he snatches 190 kilos, and he's massive. And he looks about 40 years old at 19. It's just crazy how wildly different everyone is. But these are all elite level athletes competing at the top of their game with totally different body composition. So it's easy to understand how people are not comfortable in their own skin, because there's such wildly different comparisons that we can make as to what an elite level or performance or the top of your game needs to look like. So you're, as someone who's now sort of owning a gym, I appreciate obviously you're 3 months into it, but is there anything, you've now got this kind of front row seat into that world of people and their body ideas. People are coming to the gym to improve, be it their fitness, but the vast majority of the time it is centered around body image. Is there anything that's really shocked you or stood out to you in your time being at the forefront of the fitness space now and being able to see that? Is there anything that's really stood out?
Well, I think where we can start with this is body dysmorphia in general. And speaking personally, I think this really, talking about my personal battle with mental health and eating disorders. And when I spoke in my intro about being striving and obsessive about being the best in the game and being the best I can be, looking around as a teenager, and I'm looking at, as I mentioned, I was a skinny kid even, so I had no reason to be ashamed of my body. I was already a quite a slim kid, I was not fat in any way or anything like that, but I was, really skinny. So I was looking at social media, social media at that time was just only coming around. So Facebook and things like that were only coming around. Right? And I'm seeing all these ripped guys on there. I'm thinking, wow, like I need to be like this. And I'm seeing all these footballers, and I loved playing football when I was younger, and seeing all these footballers, they're ripped and they're shredded, and I wanted to be like them. So I thought, logically in my head, okay, they must not eat a lot, or they can't consume a lot of calories at all. So any calories I was eating, that I was purging it out, because ultimately I thought, okay, that's the easiest way to now become what they are and what I was striving for. But I think there is a fine balance between obsession and a healthy obsession. So I think there's such a tipping point sometimes in anything. So whether it be working out, whether it be looking at your phone, whether it be watching Netflix, I think there's such a fine balance between a healthy obsession. I think obsession is probably the wrong word, but there's a fine balance between going to the line and then ultimately taking you above that. So we really promote, obviously, a balanced lifestyle here. You'll see the personal trainers here, for example, eating donuts and, all this kind of stuff, because ultimately we're working out because we enjoy it, and we obviously want to look good for that. But we're not going to suffocate, our healthy lifestyle because of that. We're still going to go out and eat with our friends. We're still going to go and socialize. We're still going to go down the pub, which I'm going to do tonight as well. So, it's just ultimately keeping that healthy balance. I think body dysmorphia in general is a big factor, and I think, as I said, social media at that time when I was younger was only coming into play then. And you mentioned, the likes of Sam Sulek and these people, these individuals that every picture they post is picture perfect, and what percentage of that is true? How many of those pictures have been edited, fine-tuned? They've got a team behind them that, edits their pictures for them and things like that to make them look picture perfect. So keeping that right balance between a healthy obsession and, probably an unhealthy obsession. I don't know how best to describe it, but there is such a fine balance with anything in life. And I think working out is also that as well, finding that right balance between healthy and unhealthy. And what I would say is working out ultimately, I think, helped me recover. I channeled that energy knowing that I needed good calories in to work out and the energy to do so. And without the calories, I wasn't able to work out. So I found a passion in working out, and ultimately that helped with my food intake and making sure that I can actually consume good calories, and making sure I wasn't then thinking about purging those calories out, because ultimately I knew that would affect working out. So I was ultimately driving to saying, okay, I need to work out tomorrow, so I need to make sure I eat good today. So taking one day at a time and keeping that obsession with working out. So I wanted to look good. I wanted to make sure that I was ripped and, being the best footballer I can at school and things like that. But ultimately that helped with my bulimia, and channeling that in the right way, I think, was really key for me. But I think body dysmorphia in general is, it's a huge, huge factor right now. And I think people just need to channel that in the right way. Know that social media is not real. 99% of the pictures you see online have been photoshopped or airbrushed and things. So I think channeling that in the right way is really key.
Yeah, definitely. And this idea of attachment of self-worth as well to body image is a big problem, really, because you see these photos on social media and you don't look like that. It makes you feel shit about yourself, and you're like, well, why don't I look like that? Mm. I think it's a good one. I just want to drive home the point and make sure people who are listening are reminded of the fact that your self-worth is not attached to your body image. You don't need to look like that to be worth something. And I think it's something a lot of people have struggled with and continue to struggle with, is that ability to go, actually, I don't look like that, therefore I need to, bust my ass in the gym a lot more and make sure I'm working harder than I ever have. And don't get me wrong, set those goals, make sure you are working towards goals that you want to achieve, but make sure you're doing them for you and not for someone else. It's this idea of, there's a podcast I listen to regularly, and he had a guest on called Alex Hormozy, and he said a quote that I'd like to come back to. I'm sure people have heard this podcast before, and you know, they might be sick of hearing it by now, but he's mentioned it in the past, and I think it's an important one to remind ourselves of, and it's, you have already achieved goals that you said would make you happy. You have already achieved goals that you said would make you happy.
So true.
And I've spoken about it with a few different guests, and this, you know, with another guest of mine, he says you need to just make sure you're enjoying the reward of what you do. You're achieving your PBs. Make sure you celebrate your PBs. Don't worry about what everyone else is doing, because if I have a PB, I make sure I'm taking the time to celebrate it now. Whereas in the past, I used to be like, oh, well, it's not, you know, I hit 90 kilos. Oh, well, it's not 100 kilos, is it? It's like, come on. There is no point in comparing yourself to other people, because they have such different backgrounds, physiologies, levels of flexibility, mobility. I could compare my bench press to yours, and I'm sure yours is a lot higher than mine. But if I did that, what is the point? Because you're a completely different build to me. You've been working out a lot longer than I have. Your diet's probably a lot more dialed than I have. You know, you're doing all these different factors that are different to how my life is. Your work stresses are different to mine. So it's such a redundant metric to be able to compare yourself to other people, let alone people who you've never met before as well, who you're comparing yourself to online. You got to remember that a lot of these people you're seeing and you're witnessing online are people who do this for a living. Their income is based on how they look. For 95% of the people who are probably listening to this podcast, there may be an exception. Theirs isn't. You're not getting paid to look good unless you're a model or something like that. So
exactly.
So yeah, it's
they say, I just want to throw a quote in there. I think, what is it? Comparison is the thief of joy, right? And I totally agree. You know, I see so many people, even and I know it's in the gym as well, being around the gym environment, as you said. Be like, oh yeah, see her or him doing this and that. I was like, just worry about yourself. You got to focus on yourself rather than anyone else. You're working out for yourself. No one can work out for you, and you can't work out for them. So just focus on yourself. Focus on just trying to improve yourself daily. Not even just in the gym. I think life in general. I think this comparison is humans in general. Oh, he's got this. Oh, she's got that. Oh, she's tall, she's short. Oh, you know, all these comparisons. And I think that quote just stands so true. You know, comparison is the thief of joy. Because ultimately, what are we striving for? We're striving to be the best versions of ourselves because we're unique, and we should really embrace that. So yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. There's one that Peterson, Jordan Peterson has said to elaborate on that as well. And I've said it before in a previous episode. It's, you know, comparing yourself to who you were yesterday, not who someone else is today, because it goes back to what I was saying before. There is no point in us comparing, you know, between, like, you're not a benchmark for me because I don't have the same life as you. My benchmark is, okay, I've got a goal weight or a goal, you know, that I want to achieve. I want to get fit enough to be able to achieve that goal. I want to get strong enough to be able to do that. Once I hit that goal, I can then set the bar a little bit higher. Or at least set the bar really high to begin with, but set yourself a few milestones along the way. I think as humans, we're really bad at celebrating small wins. We just have to go for the big glory ones all the time. It's, yeah, like, oh, I've hit 100 kilos. Well, you know, it's still a weight at the end of the day. Celebrate your 50 kilos, celebrate your 60 kilos, celebrate your 1.25 increase on the bar, because that's you getting stronger each time if you've plateaued. But it's just so against human nature that we love the black and white. We don't like we like the whole numbers. We like we don't like the decimal points. We don't like the small little nitty gritty bits, but actually the accumulation of those small bits are what makes the biggest changes in the long run. And it's that consistency in being able to do that. And if you can celebrate those smaller wins, that in turn kind of helps you keep motivated, because you're celebrating stuff on a regular enough basis to go, actually, no, I'm doing well at this. I'm developing and I'm pushing on. Whereas if you're like, oh, like, I've had this goal for 2 years now and I've still not been able to hit it, you're just going to feel like shit.
Exactly right. You know what? I've been working out for, what is it now? 31, started working out when I was 15. So yeah, 16 years I've been working out now. And in that time, I can tell you, you are not going to go like this. It's not going to be a constant, trajectory like this, which everyone thinks you when you're working out or anything in life. I think there's always going to be ups and downs. And I think you got to go with the peaks and troughs and do the best you can on that day. So you come into the gym, for example, and you say, oh, I'm going to hit this number today. And you ultimately hit a 10, 15 kilo below that weight. How you feel about yourself and what the self-talk to yourself is. My personal experience is, okay, I'll come back tomorrow and I'll try, and I may have a better day tomorrow. Today, I gave everything. I gave 100% of what I had today. It might not be what I wanted to do, but I gave 100%. And I know that, wholeheartedly that I gave 100% today. I didn't hit the numbers I wanted to. And I think over the 16 years that I've been working out and then transferring that into my life has been one of the game changers for me. Because, even when I'm thinking about my career, I'm thinking about, okay, I'm sitting on a great salary and, society tells me I've hit the pinnacle of my career, earning 6 figures, managing a team of 5 people in the industry I wanted to. Life is telling me, that's great. Myself, I'm not fulfilled. I'm not fulfilled with that. And ultimately, I've now gone to a trough because society-wise, I've gone in the trough because I've now quit that 6-figure job. I've now quit that comfortable life, and I've gone and taken out a load of debt to open up a gym, which society tells you you're stupid for. But I'm feeling more fulfilled, and I know that I've given 100% every day, and I know there's going to be peaks and troughs in life, and I think this is all right. We've gone into a little bit of trough, but I'm giving 100% every day to make sure that we then rise back out of this. And I think, to that point is you can't just be on a constant tangent like this. It's going to be ups and downs. And I think as long as you're giving 100%, that's all that matters.
Yeah, you're showing up at the end of the day and you're putting the work in. And even if there's days, have you heard of the concept of allostatic load at all?
I haven't actually. No, you're going to educate me now.
So essentially it's a culmination. It's like a threshold, if you like. So it's a culmination of every different factor of your life. You've got your work stresses, you've got your physical stresses, which are obviously when you're working out, you're putting physical stress on your body every time you work out. And at some point, those stresses from different facets of life are going to compound and they're going to, they're going to come together and you're going to hit your allostatic load, above which that's the point when you start to suffer from degradation in your performance. So you burn out essentially.
Yeah.
So I think understanding that, actually, if I'm going to the gym today and I've not hit what I've had to do, what else is going on in my life that I can maybe look to that might help to explain it? And I think that's a good thing to be aware of, because otherwise you go, oh, actually, I've been eating really well, I've been training really hard recently, and I've been showing up 4, 5, 6 days a week. Why am I so far away from my benchmark of where I need to be? But, your cat might have just been run over, or it's a silly example, but something may have happened in your personal life. Your relationship might go down the pan. Your work has just been hell the last couple of weeks or the last month. This is things that people don't really take into consideration because they like to separate out every facet of their life individually and go, well, actually, work life is work life. My personal life is my personal life. And the gym, especially in the, a lot in the sort of the gym bro world where, they call it the Mecca. They've got, the dungeon or the Mecca. They've got these ideals of this, this sort of place they can go, this safe space, which is locked off from everything else. Yeah. But it doesn't isolate you from everything. You need to just make sure you're aware of other things going on in your life as well. And I think if more people understood that and drew the connections between, then maybe they wouldn't feel as shit when they don't hit that PB, and they can actually use that to go, actually, well, this is all going on, so maybe I should back off a little bit next week, maybe have a deload week and then start again, or maybe I could just, instead of going for that 10-mile run, I'll go for maybe 8 this time, or 5, just to really sort of back it off until I start to feel a bit better, or or have a rest day. People are so afraid of taking rest, and even on the rest days,
it's crazy.
even on the rest days, you always feel like you've got to do something.
You're itching to do something. Yeah, I know. I've been there, and you know what? I think when we talk, there's so many things that are linked to the way society is now, and we can correlate that so much with the gym, and you know, people want instant success. You know, everything, you can pick up your phone now. I can get something from Amazon in the next. This evening, I'll probably get it delivered this evening. If I want something, I can just get it delivered home. People want results straight away. They don't want to wait. They don't want to put the work in. They don't want to go through those peaks and troughs. They just want results now. And how do I get there as quick as possible? And you know, I think the message should be that people should play in decades and not in years and months. You know, you should think about the long-term game here. Do you want to be a healthy 70-year-old, or do you want to be a kind of a crippled? You know, you look at Ronnie Coleman, idol for so many people. You know, even to this day, I think he's one of the greatest that has ever lived. But you look at his condition now; he can't even, you know, walk down the street on his own. He has to, you know, he's going in a wheelchair and all these kind of things. He's achieved greatness, but he ultimately achieved that greatness within a short period of time. He didn't play in decades; he played in a very short period of time. And I'm not taking anything away from him, but I think when you're looking at the general public, as it were, and not some, you know, Mr. Olympia, thinking about the general public, play in decades, think about, you know, the long-term game here, think about the healthy side of things. You want to be a healthy OAP, ultimately. You want to enjoy your retirement. So that's ultimately what we're striving for when we're in the gym, right? It's not because you want to look good for your holiday coming into to Marbella in 2 weeks' time, and you crash diet and play in a longer game, expect the peaks and troughs. And I think that's life in general.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head there when you said about playing decades, because, you know, another point I was going to make before was if you're not hitting what your goals, then maybe your timeline is a bit too constrained. You got to give your chance to be able to do that and accumulate it's consistency, isn't it? It's the same when you're talking about the phone there before, and about how we always, you know, like to pick up the phones and we like to do this, that, and the other. I talked about this with another guest, and it was not, he said you're practicing the habit essentially. And this is what you're doing every time you go to the gym. You're practicing a habit. You're doing the same when you're picking up your phone. You're practicing picking up your phone and being distracted. But given a long enough timeline, all that practice is going to, you know, lead to something good, I think. And there's nothing wrong with setting that goal of being shredded for your holiday in Marbella. But it's just having an appreciation for everything else as well. And that actually, if you don't have a six-pack by the time you go to Marbella, it doesn't mean you're a piece of shit. It's okay to, you know, be a little bit fluffy around the edges. And at the end of the day, even if you don't hit that goal, you're close to it anyways. Now, it's a dangerous line because people will go, well, actually, what's the point of setting goals if you know, you're letting yourself go, well, actually, I don't need to hit them. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying about having that ability to recognize that it isn't always achievable to do it in that space of time. You need to factor in other facets of your life as well to be able to understand that actually, if it doesn't happen, it may not be that you haven't tried hard enough.
No.
It might just be there's other things that, you know, happening in your life that may not have permitted you to do that at this point.
Totally agree.
So I wanted to talk about mental health as well, and obviously we spoke about it a bit before, but it's talked about a lot at the moment, a lot more than it used to be anyways, which is really good. Obviously the stereotypes are still there, but we are making progress. You know, I think it rears its head once a year with Movember, which is great, but obviously we need to make sure there's another 11 months in the year as well to make sure that we are sustaining that. But I also think that this idea of mental health gets thrown around as a bit of a defense mechanism as well. This idea that, especially the word trauma, and this is the one that sort of gets on my nerves a little bit, but the word trauma is thrown around so much at the moment with everything in social media. There's influencers, there's your celebrities that do it. You know, I was reading an article from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, and so they've basically voiced concerns about this whole idea of people throwing around the term trauma, because they're using it to describe things either incorrectly or for basically every facet of their life that they don't like. Something that's a minor inconvenience or mildly unpleasant, they're using the word trauma for. And they're saying there's a danger in that, because anytime the term is misused in that way, it's actually diluting the power and the meaning of when you have to describe a truly traumatic event. So essentially, every time you're using that word trauma to describe something that is perhaps a minor inconvenience or, something that's not great, you are essentially giving the word less meaning. And you see it with other words like toxic, for example. This idea of toxicity comes along a lot. He's being toxic, or toxic masculinity. And it's become so overused now that I find it's just every time I hear the word toxic or trauma, I almost go, it almost gets dismissed now. And that's so dangerous. So I think the language we use with this sort of thing is so important. And I will caveat that what I've just said is obviously subjective. So my trauma may be something that's a minor irritation to you, and likewise. So it's not to dismiss the validity of what they're saying, but more to say, actually, be careful with the language you're using. And I think that's quite a dangerous game to be playing at the moment. And that's making me a little bit uneasy with the whole term of mental health. And I think it kind of takes away from the message that we're trying to push with obviously being an advocate for mental health, making sure you're having those conversations, but not to the point of when you've got people who are saying, this was so like my trauma. And I think for men, that just pushes them in the opposite direction by going, well, if this is what mental health is, then I don't really want to be a part of it.
Yeah. And I think, again, it's almost a trend thing. I see a lot of people posting depression and this, but people that are actually going through depression, they're not going on social media and posting about it, trust me, because it is such a brutal area to be in, such a dark place. And when people are brandishing, they're just chucking out trauma, depression, all these words, which then it's almost become a trendy thing to become, and I think that's the opposite of exactly what we're trying to achieve here with spreading the word about positive mental health. So there is so many positives with social media. I think there is genuinely so many positives with social media if used right, but there is so many negatives as well. And I think this is one of them. It's like joining a bandwagon, joining the trending era almost, as it were, like with Twitter or whatever they're called, X now. You got a trend, you got the trending topics, and mental health seems to be one of those which we've obviously now brought to the forefront for all the right reasons, but it's now almost becoming a trend to say, I'm depressed, or I've got through all this trauma. So I totally agree with you. We've overused the words almost and lost its meaning, where I think it just needs now to be kind of toned back and say, okay, like, you're going through a tough time. Life is fucking hard, in general for everyone. You're going through a bad patch, but it's not because you're depressed. It's you're going through some shit which you just need to deal with. I totally agree with you. So yeah.
So I mean, we could talk about it forever and a day, couldn't we? But yeah, it's one of those ones which we just need to discuss over a coffee, I think. All right. So if there's anything, if people want to find out a little bit more about your work and what you're doing, is there anywhere they can go?
So yeah, obviously with my mental health background and what I did with the charity Beat, I did a few articles with the BBC and the Guardian as well. Hopefully we can link them in the description or something so people can check that out, and where to find out a bit more information about Beat. So if anyone's listening to this and suffering with their own mental health and eating disorders especially, Beat is such an amazing charity. I don't do any work with them at the moment because I'm just so busy, but I wish I could. But yeah, when I joined Beat 10 years ago, being the first British Asian male to join them, that also struck me as something which was crazy because, we've got millions and millions of British Asian men in the UK, and I can't be the only one that had been going through this and openly talking about this. was such a huge thing back, 10 years ago when I started doing work for them. They made it such a huge thing that Priyesh has come out and speaking about this, and and I think that has obviously changed now over the last 10 years, which is great to see. But I think people are still needing help and need to come out more and speak about this stuff. And to our point, it started to dilute the mental health aspect of things, that people chucking around has got trauma and mental health issues. But if people genuinely need help, I think Beat's a great charity, and obviously we can link the articles down below, hopefully in the description and things like that. If people want to find out a bit more about the gym as well and know a bit more about us, I hope we can put the social media handles on there. And yeah, obviously know more about what we're going to do in the next few months with being a mental health hub and community and things, that what we want to stand for at Fortitude. So yeah, some exciting things coming for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, look forward to that one. Yeah, I'll put the links in the description and those articles as well. And I think you touched on a nice point there about obviously making sure we are reaching out to people, and I think that's something that is still getting pushed, but it's still something, especially being a male. Like I think it's still something that some people find it easier than others, but I've noticed, especially generationally. So if you are of a generation that's maybe a little bit older, just you can talk to people, and it doesn't mean that we think you're weak. You don't, it's not the world war anymore. We don't need to, you don't need to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. You can share the burden. There's enough people around you to support you to be able to go, actually, you know what? A load shared is a load halved, as they say. So just being able to talk to the people if you want to, in the way you want to. Just make sure you reach out and talk to people. If you've got friends, check in on them. Just, people you haven't spoken to in a while, it's nice to just touch base and say, hey, how you doing? How you getting on? And they can tell you as much as they want to or as little as they want to. But either way, they will appreciate the fact that you've reached out to them and made that conversation. I think too many times we're waiting for the other person, and it's like, I'll wait for him to get in contact, and then you'll go, well, maybe he'll get in contact a bit, and then you're both waiting for each other, and then it never happens. So I always say just get in contact. If you think about it, shoot him a message and go for it, or her or him, whatever you want to do.
Absolutely, yeah. And I, as I said, I think we're living in a society now where we're getting more and more lonely. We're becoming more recluse, and we just living our own lives, and I don't think that's healthy at all. So I know obviously people going to the pub and going out drinking and things, and clubbing and all these kind of things are obviously going less and less. The trend is going the other way, but hopefully, places like Fortitude and gyms and where you can come and be part of a healthy community and make healthy connections, and so you don't need to be kind of suffering alone. There's always a space that you can go to and converse with people and make friends and build connections. But absolutely, yeah, I think a key part, as I said, of my recovery was speaking to people, and I wish I had more people to speak to at that time. So if anyone's going through anything like that, then yeah, the message would be reach out to your close friends and family, and don't be afraid to be judged, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. There's actually, I was reading Sapiens the other day there's a Yuval Noah Harari. He's done a book called Sapiens, and it's basically how we've evolved as humans to become the most dominant species on the planet, Homo sapiens. And there was a chapter I was reading, and it was actually about how even trivial things such as gossiping, we are unique in the sense that no other animal really does that. They've all got their own languages, and they all converse with each other. But it's our ability to imagine things and gossip with each other and make up stories around certain things that have actually enabled us to, form connections with other people. And that's what's ultimately made us become the dominant species on the planet. So if you've ever wanted an excuse to talk to people, just say, you know what? That's what separates me from the cavemen.
If you ever need an excuse, yeah, there is one there.
Yeah. mean, it's probably quite a low down the excuses list, but
That's brilliant.
when you finish clubbing yourself over the head.
Yeah.
Anyways,
That's brilliant.
yeah. Priyesh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been hugely insightful. You know, it's nice to actually be able to talk to someone who's actually been through it. You know, there's everything you read on the internet is one thing, but actually hearing it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, someone who's actually been through and lived through that experience, to be able to say, actually, you know, this is what has been helpful for me, I think just really helps to drive the point home. And it's I've certainly taken a lot away from this. So thanks very much, Pri.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to add, I think mental health, you know, you say, that person or this person suffering with poor mental health. I think then we should look at it kind of as physical health. Everyone's got health. And, you know, whether you've got physical health, mental health, I think you should view both of those as a similar thing, right? So I think people need to work on their mental health every day. So whether you have poor mental health or great mental health, it's something you need to work on every day, same as you would, you know, your physical body. I think it's your mind is so powerful that you need to be working on it every day to be feeding it the positive affirmations, you know, doing meditation, all these things that can really help your brain health. I think we really need to be advocating this as well. It's not okay because I've got poor mental health, I now need to start looking after my mental health. It's, you know, it's work every day, and even for myself, you know. Yes, I've recovered from bulimia, and you know, it's been many years since you know, I had those instances of bulimia. But it's an everyday, not a battle, but an everyday kind of work in progress to better your mental health and keep yourself in a great space. And I think I just want to put that message out there that we should view mental health the same we view our physical health. Should be working on it every day and trying to strive for a better mind, because ultimately, you're the one that's got to live in your own mind. No one else is going to live there. So I think it's an everyday thing that, you know, we need to be working on.
Proactive rather than reactive.
Absolutely. Thank you, Reese. I really appreciate this conversation, and yeah, we went from one topic to another, but I think it was a great conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, no, really appreciate it. Thanks, Pri, and hopefully we'll do it. Maybe do it again sometime.
Top man, Reese. I'll see you in the gym.
See you in the gym.